Coming up on This Week in Canada, Justin Trudeau's in a bit of trouble from the US and the UK media.
And on top of that, a Liberal MP reveals just a bit too much on Zoom.
But before we get started, make sure you go down to the description below and click the links. It's an easy way to support us. You can go to our store or check out our premium content. Now, let's get started.
How are we doing, guys? It's so good to be back. Bobby, how are you?
I'm doing very well, man. I'm glad to see you're fully dressed.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. Which is an interesting thing to say because it relates to the first story of this week, which is a Liberal MP happened to go on Zoom, arse naked, just displaying everything to the great Canadian public. Oh, actually, it wasn't. But an MP, let's face it, probably a Conservative, took a picture of it, sent it to a journalist, and now this guy's schlong has been put out all over the free world. Not a great day for him, I suppose.
Yeah, so basically the story is, Nico just summed it up there pretty well, but let's get into the dirty deets of this just juicy, not scandal, but I mean, the guy just junk was out there for like I mean, the photos everywhere. You may have already seen it, but this guy's name is he's a Liberal MP, William Amos, who says he was out for a jog, and then just, I guess, before question period starts, he goes for a run to, I don't know, get as you do, just, you know, before a question period, get really sweaty and whatever. So then he goes to his house and he doesn't do the first rule of Zoom, which is always assume the camera's on. You got to make sure your camera's pointed away at the ceiling. Get some tape. That's what I do. I put a little tape on top of my laptop, and he went on full naked, but he was covering, it's almost like he knew that the camera was on a little bit because he was covering his junk with like a cell phone or something.
Yeah, it's a tiny cell phone as well. It's like one of those flip phones, and it seemed to be so conveniently placed to sort of spare him that last shred of dignity, which is sort of would have been taken away from him. But what's been interesting in the wake of this, obviously we reported on it because it's funny. And then the Toronto Sun also found it quite funny, and other outlets, reported on it. I mean, The Guardian reported on it. And, they weren't, showing how morally superior they were. They did it because it was funny. But the Liberal, I think, father of the house, who's a guy called Pablo Rodriguez, which technically counts as a ministerial position, came out and said, how dare you? Why would you screen cap this and send it to a journalist? This is a man in the nude. You are doing this without his consent. And, of course, it's embarrassing, and I feel a bit bad for the guy. But he went a step further and said, this potentially is criminal. But to me, it seems if you're an elected official, part of the job is that you sort of deserve a bit of ridicule. You deserve, Canadians are allowed to make fun of you for silly mistakes, which seems to be totally forgotten.
Yeah, and the other thing that's going to happen now is they're going to do an investigation to try to find out who leaked the photo. And let's put up on the screen here really quickly a couple tweets from our old friend Jerry Butts. I don't know if you saw Jerry Butts had something to say about this. Let's pull those up now. So here's his tweet. All I'll say about Will Amos is he's a lifelong, intelligent, articulate advocate for the environment and a great guy. I don't doubt any of that. I'm sure that's all true. As for the press gallery, you've just set the bar at publishing naked pictures of a human being without their consent. Hope the clicks are worth it.
They were.
They totally were. Gerald, thank you for asking. And no, it was not just Brian Lilly and the Rebel. Does he still work there?
He doesn't.
It was CTV, Global, Post Media, and so on, which is us. A lot of people who should and often claim to know better. We don't. We saw the story and immediately knew that we should run that, and we're very happy that we did. To Will Amos's credit,
he played it off well.
He played it off well. It seems like he's going to be okay.
Terribly embarrassing. And, to be fair, I think this is a mistake, particularly in this era of almost uninterrupted Zoom calls, where mistakes like this do happen. But, I think if you just play it off as a joke, say it's embarrassing, say it wasn't great, then that's the way to handle it. I mean, it's not as though anyone's criticizing him, really. It was a bit stupid.
No.
But, it does happen.
Dude, in fact, I think it was a Bloc MP who was addressing the room said that he was in pretty good shape. And you went, can we pull up the photo on the screen again? Let's look at him. He looks pretty good.
Yeah.
I think he's kind of hot. This is a sweet transition. I love it. Our next topic has to do with a guy from CNN who I don't think I like a whole lot, but seems like he's coming around. He's starting to do us some favors. And his name is Jake Tapper. He's an anchor, longtime anchor, I think, at CNN. And he has coined a term that is now trending on Twitter that has to do with our prime minister, Justin Trudeau. And the term is Tru-anon, which is obviously a play on QAnon. What happened here, Nico? I think you know a little bit about this.
Yeah, so for some context, I think Tru-anon is to describe sort of the fervent, incorrigible Trudeau supporters who will continue to support the guy no matter what he does. You know, he can wear blackface, he can totally bugger up the vaccine procurement, and yet still they'll support him. And there's a few of these grifters sort of floating around on Twitter and the internet, but we know they've gone sort of untouched recently. But this whole thing with Jake Tapper fits into a sort of wave of criticism that the Prime Minister has received from America in particular. And it's quite interesting, really, because the liberal media in the US, who wrote such wonderful things about Trudeau since 2015, calling him a feminist, you know, calling him a wonderful guy who's great for climate change. Look at him compared to Trump. This is the sort of leadership we want. He's handsome. Look at his beard. It's beautiful. And, you know, it goes on and on and on. And then suddenly, Jake Tapper, alongside The Atlantic, I think the Wall Street Journal had a go, obviously Fox News has been attacking the guy for a while. They all came out and said, this guy is ruining Canada. And Jake Tapper went one step further and said, Canadians deserve better. They're not getting vaccinated. And it's true, Canada keeps stepping further and further behind on the global sort of table for the percentage of the population that has been vaccinated. And, I mean, it's wonderful to see. I mean, who would have thought, right?
Yeah, and you do get these fervent defenders. I have one guy who every time I tweet about Trudeau and vaccines, his profile picture is of like a broken egg. And he'll tweet like information kind of just like making the liberals look good.
Yeah.
And these people, I don't know if they're bots, but I wouldn't be surprised. So let's just pull up the tweet on the screen really quickly of Tapper coining Tru-anon. James Gunn, who I think is a director, said, as someone in Canada, while most of my friends in the U.S. strike that all of my friends have at least one shot, this has been distressing to say the least. And here's Jake Tapper saying, careful for acknowledging facts or Tru-anon will attack you. Immediately after this, MP, who I like very much, and Nico does too, Michelle Rempel-Garner said, Tru-anon, will it stick? Well, the next day, we see Tru-anon was trending on Twitter, and Michelle Rempel-Garner even went so far as to mention it in Parliament during question period when she was talking to Justin Trudeau. And by the way, let's just roll that clip really quick. It's only going to take a second of how smug Justin Trudeau is in his response to the Conservatives here. I can't stand this guy. Let's roll it really quick.
When asked this week if he could have done anything better, the Prime Minister said no. Why won't he show some contritions while Canadians get infected by the variants?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it is concerning but also symptomatic of the Conservative Party of Canada that they would pick someone to be their health critic who then gives a question listing a whole bunch of facts that are simply not correct.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
You know, Mr. Speaker, CNN's Jake Tapper just called that type of spin Tru-anon. I really hope that sticks. You know, Canadians deserve better. There are zoo animals that are being vaccinated in the United States, while Quebec is reporting a wave of femicides because women are locked down with their abusers. The variants are spreading across the country. If we had had vaccines in January and February, while the rest of the world was rolling them out, we would not be in this situation.
And another thing, which is interesting, is in this clip, or a bit further on, it's just cut out, I think, he talked about Britain. And he says that, oh no, the vaccines in Britain have been terrible. You know, let's consider the facts here. And on top of that, they're experiencing their third wave, despite the fact that I think 50% of the population has received their first jab. You know, we're approaching herd immunity in the UK. Yeah. And the British media, on top of the American media, decided to attack this guy because he just made up the fact that the UK is having a third wave. When in fact, Canada's having a third wave because Justin Trudeau, as I said, has been terrible in his governance in the sort of latter parts of the pandemic. You know, I've said this in other podcasts, and it's interesting. Boris Johnson totally screwed up the first bit of the pandemic, but that was the part that required locking down the population. And maybe it's not a terrible thing if your prime minister's terrible at keeping people indoors or is, you know, a bit slow and takes everything into account before he does it. Whereas Justin Trudeau shut everyone down instantly.
Gave them all $2,000
yeah.
the next day.
Yeah.
Just on a whim.
Yeah, and then, the most important bit, or at least a bit that will be remembered, I think, in 10 years or 20 years' time, was when it came to actually taking the populace out of lockdown. Boris Johnson was quite bullish with the vaccines. He spent a lot of money, choosing which vaccines. He sort of did a carpet bombing of what to take. So when the time came, we had all this stuff available. Justin Trudeau did none of that. He actually put money into a Chinese vaccine, and I don't think we've received that yet. So he had to scramble for other vaccines, including going into what I think was coined like the Third World Fund or something like that.
We took vaccines from that. And that was one thing I actually really liked in the CNN report. I think it was the CNN report where they mentioned that Trudeau frequently boasted of having the most doses of vaccine per capita of any country in the world, because they did sign like 10 contracts with either Johnson & Johnson, all the ones you hear about all the time. But that hasn't played out well. It turns out if you have no vaccine manufacturing, which we haven't, we have none. It doesn't matter how many doses are way over in Europe or in the United States, we can't get them. So it's just one thing. You know what? CNN don't like them, but I'm going to say that they're doing a better job covering Canada's problems than the CBC is. It is to be expected apparently at this point. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Want a kiss?
That's not.
Let's go to our next segment. Well, that was a fun episode, eh, Nico?
What a fun episode. One of my favorites so far.
Well, if you like fun episodes, there's actually more where that came from. If you go to the links below right now, you will find a link to our premium content. And because we're just getting this whole ball rolling, this episode coming out this week, the premium content is free. And it's basically another episode of Twig. We're going into a totally different topic that we didn't touch this week today. Other than that, we have a bunch of stuff that you can support us with. You could join our mailing list. You could buy a t-shirt. You can go to our Facebook page and give it a like, or just give us a donation at the support Post Millennial link there below. That was pretty much it, eh, Nico?
I think we nailed it.
I think we had a good time.
And in the premium episode as well, something to get you all titillated, we talk about Error No Tools carbon tax.
Yeah, so I'm sure you guys will really like his new shtick, this new carbon tax that he's bringing to you. So give that a watch. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.